This state 8 of God is of the highest divine consciousness, which is the Ahadiyat, parentheses, Halat Muhammadi, or the Vidyan. All God-realized beings, the Majzuba Kamil, or Brahmi Bhut, the Majzub Salik, the Paramahansa, the Azad Mutlak, the Jivan Mukta, the Kutub, Sadguru, and Rasul, Avatar, retire to this state B of God in the beyond after disembodiment. Meher Baba explained that such a disembodied state of the perfect master is referred to by the Sufis as Halat Muhammadi, state of Muhammad, as distinguished from Muqam Muhammadi, parentheses, office of Muhammad. When in a physical body, Hakikat Muhammadi is the 10th state of God in a physical body, and the Muqam Muhammadi, office of Muhammad, is the Vidyan Bhumika, parentheses, the office of Vidyan, depicted in the chart as C. State Roman numeral 9. God as liberated incarnate soul. If God, divinely absorbed as in state 8, recovers and maintains normal consciousness of the mental, subtle, and gross spheres through his mental, subtle, and gross aspects as an embodiment of a perfect human being, known as Majzub, divinely absorbed, he then experiences state 9 at the divine junction between God states 8 and 10. If the soul recovers the normal consciousness of the mental, subtle, and gross bodies and spheres, it comes out of the Majzub state 8, crossing the Phanafila, to get the experience of the Bakabila state. But before becoming established in Bakabila, it may enter the state known to Sufis as Fana Ma'al-Baka of the Muqam Furutat, which the Vedantists called the Turiya Avastha. This is state 9 at the divine junction between the Phanafila and Bakabila of divinity. The God-realized souls in a human body at this state are either the Paramahansa, parentheses, the Majzub Salik or Salik Majzub, or the Jivan Mukta, parentheses, the Azad Mutlak. They both enjoy infinite knowledge, power, and bliss, and are conscious of the I am God state. They differ from the Majzuba Kamil, however, in that they can and do become conscious of the three bodies and the three spheres, mental, subtle, and gross. While the Majzub state is a continual state of being divinely absorbed, the state of the Paramahansa is one of sometimes being divinely absorbed and sometimes recovering normal consciousness of one who experiences the Saluk of the Salukiyat. His conscious experience is sometimes that of, quote, I am my own God, and sometimes, quote, I am my own creature. The state of the Jivan Mukta is of one who normally experiences the Saluk of Salukiyat, i.e., of one permanently established in the state of Bakabila. Both the Paramahansa and Jivamukta differ from the Kutub in not being able to use the infinite knowledge, power, and bliss that they experience continuously. No direct spiritual benefit accrues to the world from a Paramahansa or Jivan Mukta. Editor's note: nevertheless, indirectly, anyone coming in contact with him automatically benefits. However, a Jivan Mukta towards the end of his life does make one single soul perfect like himself, although he has no duty in the three spheres. He enjoys the Bakabila state. God as man-God and God-man. Oh, that's state Roman numeral 10. God as man-God and God-man. This is the state of God in a human body, such as a perfect master. Parentheses, Kutub Sadguru. In this state, the perfect master, or the man-God, is divinely, unattachedly, and unlimitedly above the law of illusion that governs the cosmic creation in an infinitely systematical order. And yet he permits himself to be bound by the limitations of time, space, and causation while continually experiencing consciously his, quote, I am God state and his infinite power, knowledge, and bliss. He not only experiences these infinite attributes, but he also uses these for the emancipation of other souls in the grip of ignorance, who are still unconscious of their own eternal reality. This is the state of absolute perfection. Here God is with attributes and with form, parentheses, Saguna and Sakar. According to the Sufis, the Kutub connotes the highest point on the upward journey. He is the summum bonum of creation and the fairest flower of humanity. In the Majzub state, the soul enjoyed the infinite bliss of the I am God state, but the perfect master, parentheses, Kutub Sadguru, enjoys the infinite bliss of the I am God state and also the highest divine consciousness of everything is I and everything is from me. This 10th state of God in the human body is the state of Hakikat Ehumadi. The perfect masters, Kutubs or Sadgurus, and the avatar, Rasul, are all of this state. Whether God is in the state of man-God as perfect master or in the state of God-man as avatar, he is in this 10th state and functions as a man-God and as a God-man from the divine office Mukam-e-Muhammadi, or Vidyan Bhumika, depicted in the chart as C. The first manifestation of God with his infinite consciousness assumed this divine office, and this office will ever continue to function eternally to radiate infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, which the perfect masters and the avatar not only eternally experience, but also use for the emancipation of all souls who are still in the grip of ignorance, trying to gain consciousness of their eternal state of oneness with the Oversoul. In other words, God in a human body will everlastingly manifest himself in all his perfection, only through this divine office marked C in the chart, the 10 states of God. It was only through this divine office that God, as God-man, in the form of Zoroaster, Rama, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and others, manifested himself and proclaimed in every cycle, age after age, that he is the Savior, the Prophet, the Messiah, the Son of God, the Avatar, the Rasul, the Buddha, and so forth. And it is only through this divine office that the 5 perfect masters, or the Kutubs, or the Sadguru's function as the summum bonum of the whole cosmic creation. The Sufis call this divine office Muqam-e-Muhammadi, after the name of the Prophet Muhammad, the Rasul of God in his Haqiqat-e-Muhammadi. Similarly, Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, is, like Muhammad, Zoroaster, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, the God-man, whilst Christ, like Haqiqat-e-Muhammadi, is the divine state of Jesus. When we try to put together all the different stages of God in a nutshell, 5 distinct stages in the travail of the unconscious Paramatma to gain complete consciousness become conspicuous. The first stage. Number 1. To begin with, Atma, soul, and Paramatma, oversoul, are both one in the infinite, indivisible oneness of reality. 2. Before the beginning of the beginning, Paramatma and all Atmas were unconscious and unimpressioned. 3. In the beginning, Atma had no consciousness of the gross body, subtle body, or mental body, and therefore had no experience of the gross world, the subtle world, or the mental world. Atma was even unconscious of its own self, and therefore had no experience of its own Paramatma state. This is the stage depicted as State A in the chart of the 10 states of God. The second stage. Atma gains consciousness and has impressions. At this stage, Atma is conscious either of the gross body or the subtle body or the mental body, and experiences either the gross world or the subtle world or the mental world. But Atma is still unconscious of its own self and therefore does not experience the Paramatma state yet. This is the stage as in states 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 according to the chart. The third stage, Atma becomes impressionless but retains full and complete consciousness. This complete consciousness is now no longer of the gross body, the subtle body, or the mental body, and therefore Atma no longer experiences the gross world, the subtle world, or the mental world. This consciousness that is retained is of Atma's own infinite self, and therefore Atman now experiences the Paramatma state consciously and experiences the infinite power, knowledge, and bliss of the I Am God state. This is the stage noted as State 8 in the chart. The fourth stage. Atma recovers the so-called normal consciousness of the gross body, the subtle body, and the mental body, and therefore once again experiences at one and the same time the gross world, the subtle world, and the mental world. At this stage, Atma is simultaneously also conscious of its own infinite self and experiences the infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss of its own Paramatma state. But Atma cannot use these infinite attributes, even though at this stage it is conscious of its gross, subtle, and mental bodies and experiences simultaneously the 3 worlds. This is the stage of State 9 in the chart. The fifth stage. Atma is fully and completely conscious of the gross body, the subtle body, and the mental body, and experiences the gross world, the subtle world, and the mental world simultaneously, with having the highest divine consciousness of its infinite self, and also experiences and uses the infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss of its own Paramatma state. This is the stage of State 10, as shown in the chart of the 10 states of God. Editor's note, A summary by Meher Baba of different terms for status, state, stage, or aspect, and gnosis in the eternal sphere of reality appears on pages 278-279. The gnosis of I am God is common to each one of the four types of perfection and does not end on physical death. Part 10. Conclusion. God cannot be explained, he cannot be argued about, he cannot be theorized, nor can he be discussed and understood. God can only be lived. Here we have note number 36 of the supplement. Title is Meher Baba Says, subtitled Spiritual Paradox. Quote, unless and until ignorance is removed and knowledge is gained, parentheses, the knowledge whereby the divine life is experienced and lived, everything pertaining to the spiritual seems paradoxical. God, whom we do not see, we say is real, and the world which we do see, we say is unreal. In experience, what exists for us does not really exist, and what does not exist for us really exists. We must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves. Thus, loss itself is gain. We must die to self to live in God. Thus, death means life. We must become completely void inside to be completely possessed by God. Thus, complete emptiness means absolute fullness. We must become naked of selfhood by being nothing, so as to be absorbed in the infinity of God. Thus, nothing means everything. Subtitle: Existence is substance and life is shadow. Quote, existence is eternal, whereas life is perishable. Comparatively, existence is what his body is to man, and life is as the cloth that covers the body. The same body changes clothes according to seasons, time, and circumstances, just as the one and eternal existence is always there throughout the countless and varied aspects of life. Shrouded beyond recognition by the cloak of life with its multifarious folds and colors is existence unchangeable. It is the garb of life with its veils of mind, energy, and gross forms that shadows and superimposes on existence, presenting the eternal, indivisible, and unchangeable existence as transient, varied, and ever-changing. Existence is all-pervading and is the underlying essence of all things, whether animate or inanimate, real or unreal, varied in species or uniform in forms, collective or individual, abstract or substantial. In the eternity of existence there is no time, there is no past and no future, only the everlasting present. In eternity, nothing has ever happened and nothing will ever happen. Everything is happening in the unending now. Existence is God, whereas life is illusion. Existence is reality, whereas life is imagination. Existence is everlasting, whereas life is ephemeral. Existence is unchangeable, whereas life is ever-changing. Existence is freedom, whereas life is a binding. Existence is indivisible, whereas life is multiple. Existence is imperceptible, whereas life is deceptive. Existence is independent, whereas life is dependent upon mind, energy, and gross forms. Existence is, whereas life appears to be. Existence, therefore, is not life. Birth and death do not mark the beginning or end of life, whereas the numerous stages and states of life which constitute the so-called births and deaths are governed by the laws of evolution and reincarnation. Life comes into being only once, with the advent of the first dim rays of limited consciousness, and succumbs to death only once, on attaining the unlimited consciousness of infinite existence. Existence, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present God, is beyond cause and effect, beyond time and space, beyond all actions. Existence touches all things and all shadows. Nothing can ever touch existence. Even the very fact of its being does not touch existence. To realize existence, life must be shed. It is life that endows limitations to the unlimited self. Life of the limited self is sustained by the mind creating impressions, by energy supplying the impetus to accumulate and dissipate these impressions through expressions, and by gross forms and bodies functioning as the instruments through which these impressions are spent, reinforced, and eventually exhausted through actions. Life is thickly linked with actions. Life is lived through actions. Life is valued through actions. Life's survival depends on actions. Life cognizant is actions. Actions opposite in nature. Actions affirmative and negative. Actions constructive and destructive. Therefore, to let life succumb to its ultimate death is to let all actions end. When actions end completely, life of the limited self spontaneously experiences itself as existence of the unlimited self. Existence being realized, evolution and involution of consciousness is complete. Illusion vanishes, and the law of reincarnation no longer binds. Simply to desist from committing actions will never put an end to actions. It would merely mean putting into action yet another action, that of inactivity. To escape from actions is not the remedy for the uprooting of actions. Rather, this would give scope to the limited self to get more involved in the very act of escaping, thus creating more actions. Actions, both good and bad, are like knots in the tangled thread of life. The more persistent the efforts to undo the knots of action, the firmer become the knots and the greater the entanglement. Only actions can nullify actions, in the same way that poison can counteract the effects of poison. A deeply embedded thorn may be extricated by the use of another thorn or any sharp object resembling it, such as a needle, used with skill and precaution. Similarly, actions are totally uprooted by other actions when they are committed by some activating agent other than the self. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga serve the purpose of being prominent signposts on the path of truth, directing the seeker toward the goal of eternal existence. But the hold of life, fed by actions, is so tight on the aspirant that even with the help of these inspiring signposts, he fails to be guided in the right direction. As long as the self is bound by actions, the aspirant or even the pilgrim on the path toward truth is sure to go astray through self-deception. Throughout all ages, sadhus and seekers, sages and saints, munis and monks, tapasavis and sannyasis, yogis, sufis, and talibs has struggled during their lifetimes, undergoing untold hardships in their efforts to extricate themselves from the maze of actions and to realize the eternal existence by overcoming life. They fail in their attempts because the more they struggle with their selves, the firmer the selves become gripped by life. Through actions intensified by austerities and penances, by seclusions and pilgrimages, by meditation and concentration, by assertive utterances and silent contemplation, by intense activity and inactivity, by silence and verbosity, by japas and tapas, and by all types of yogas and chillas. Emancipation from the grip of life and freedom from the labyrinths of actions are made possible for all and attained by a few when a perfect master, Sadguru or Kutub, is approached and his grace and guidance are invoked. The perfect master's invariable counsel is complete surrender to him. Those few who do surrender their all, mind, body, possessions, so that with their complete surrender they also surrender consciously their own selves to the perfect master, still have their very being left conscious to commit actions which are now activated only by the dictates of the master. Such actions, after the surrender of one's self, are no longer one's own actions. Therefore, these actions are capable of uprooting all other actions which feed and sustain life. Life then becomes gradually lifeless and eventually succumbs, by the grace of the perfect master, to its final death. Life, which once debarred the persevering aspirant from realizing perpetual existence, can now no longer work its own deception. I have emphasized in the past, I tell you now, and I shall age after age forevermore repeat, that you should shed your cloak of life and realize existence which is eternally yours. To realize this truth of unchangeable, indivisible, all-pervading existence, the simplest way is to surrender to me completely, so completely that you are not even conscious of your surrender, conscious only to obey me and to act as and when I order you. If you seek to live perpetually, then crave for the death of your deceptive self at the hands of complete surrender to me. This yoga is the essence of all yogas in one. The four journeys. God is infinite and his shadow is also infinite. The shadow of God is the infinite space that accommodates the infinite gross sphere which, with its occurrences of millions of universes, within and without the range of men's knowledge, is the creation that issued from the point of finiteness in the infinite existence that is God. In these millions of universes are many systems of planets. Some are in gaseous states, some in states of solidification, some of stone and metal, some which also have vegetation. Some have also developed life forms such as worms, some also fish, some also birds, some also animals, and a few also have human beings. Thus it is that throughout the myriads of universes there are planets on which the seven kingdoms of evolution are manifested, and the evolution of consciousness and forms is completed. But only on the planet Earth do human beings reincarnate and begin the involutionary path to self-realization. Earth is the center of this infinite gross sphere of millions of universes, inasmuch as it is the point to which all human conscious souls must migrate in order to begin the involutionary path. This involutionary path has 7 stations, and arrival at the 7th station completes the first journey to God. Although the completion of this journey is the goal of all human souls, only a very few at any given moment embark upon it. The arrival at the end of this journey is the drowning of individuality in the ocean of infinite consciousness, and the journey's completion is the soul's absorption in the state of I am God with full consciousness, and as God it experiences infinite power, knowledge, and bliss. Out of all the souls who complete the first journey, a very few enter the second journey. This journey has no stations. It is an instantaneous journey, the journey of infinite consciousness being shaken from its absorption in I am God to abiding in God as God. In this state, individuality is regained, but individuality is now infinite, and this infinity includes gross consciousness, and so as man and God, it experiences infinite power, knowledge, and bliss in the midst of most finiteness. The unlimited soul knows its unlimitedness in the midst of limitation. The third journey is undertaken only by those who have accomplished the second journey, and whose lot it is to bear the burden of the exercise of infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, and so live God's life both as man and God simultaneously. There are only 5 such masters living on the earth at any given moment, and they control the movement of the universes and the affairs of the worlds of men. Only when one of these 5 perfect masters drops his body can one of those who are abiding in God as God move onwards and complete the third journey to fill the vacant office. It is the duty of these 5 perfect masters to precipitate the advent of the Ancient One, Avatar, and to hand over to him the charge of his own creation. All those who live God's life on earth, and all those who abide in God as God on earth, when they drop their bodies, also shed forever their subtle and mental vehicles, and pass away utterly as God, retaining infinite individuality and experiencing infinite power, knowledge, and bliss. This is the 4th journey. In reality, these 4 journeys are never journeyed, for God has nowhere to journey. He is without beginning and without end, and everything which has the appearance of being appeared from that which has no beginning, and passes back into that which has no ending. Back to the texts. So I'll just repeat the first sentence of part 10, the conclusion. God cannot be explained. He cannot be argued about. He cannot be theorized, nor can he be discussed and understood. God can only be lived. Nevertheless, all that is said here and explained about God, to appease the intellectual convulsions of the mind of man, still lacks many more words and further explanations, because the truth is that the reality must be realized and the divinity of God must be attained and lived. To understand the infinite eternal reality is not the goal of individualized beings in the illusion of creation, because the reality can never be understood. It is to be realized by conscious experience. Therefore, the goal is to realize the reality and attain the I am God state in human form. Next, we have the chart that is not titled, but it has several titles scattered throughout. Upper left, we have formless and colorless, God's creative. On top we have God and beyond state, and also beyond state of God. Upper right corner, and impulsive imagination. Lower left corner, to know himself as. Lower right corner, omnipresent, infinite, and eternal. Then we have evolution with winding of sanskaras, stone, metal, vegetable, worm, insect, and reptile, fish, bird, animal, human. Then begins reincarnation, unwinding sanskaras. Involution, first plane, second plane, third plane, fourth plane, subtle sphere. Also, the gross sphere, backing up a bit, is it includes countless suns, stars, moons, and the earth on which only it is possible to attain God realization. And there's the gaseous forms before the stone, metal, vegetable. So the subtle sphere comprise first, second, third, and the fourth plane is between the subtle and the mental, or overlaps both, is another way of putting it. And fifth plane and sixth plane are of the mental sphere. Sixth plane has an eye that sees. The seventh plane, God's realization as himself, of himself as infinite. So that was evidently chart 8A, and the explanation is, the subtitle, the title of the explanation is Creation, Evolution, Reincarnation, Involution, and Realization according to Meher Baba. This chart, painted by Reno Gailey under the supervision of Meher Baba, is a pictorial version of the book God Speaks. God in the beyond state represents God as pure essence, infinite, original, and eternal. Unaware of anything, even of himself, God is. God in the beyond state represents the oversoul, Paramatma, essentially the same as God in the beyond state, except that here surged the whim to know himself, and he became conscious of infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, and simultaneously conscious of illusion, which manifested as the creation. By completing his journey through the worlds of forms, he sheds the illusion of their apparent reality. Reading counterclockwise, the first forms taken by souls emanating from the creation point are gaseous. As consciousness evolves, souls take the innumerable forms indicated, experience increasing impressions, sanskaras. Arriving at the state of man, the soul has achieved complete consciousness and reincarnates innumerable times until it is ready to experience involution, all of which takes place while embodied in the gross world. While getting free of sanskaras, The ascending soul gradually becomes aware of the 7 planes and higher spheres until it is liberated from all bindings and becomes one with God, God realized. The first 3 planes depict subtle awareness. The 4th portrays the vast powers and energies encountered there. The 5th is the plane of sainthood and is in the mental sphere. The 6th is the plane of illumination, and the 7th is the plane of God realization, i.e., unity with God. And that brings us to the end of the text.